You'll have to excuse the Australian wildlife in the background, but I'm sure it's quite pleasant to hear, considering we're doing such a horrible subject. Okay, so now this is just a few minutes later than the last chart, when he was actually stopped and apprehended by the police on that bridge. Now, this is really interesting, and you'll see why soon, but there's a few things that I want to point out. The ascendant at 14 Pisces is actually conjunct a fixed star called a Kernar. That's how I pronounce it. It's probably very different. Achhernar. Now, it's very interesting to me, but the meaning of the word of that and the degree is the mouth of the river. So not only is it showing us water, it represents a mouth of a river. And also there's some religious overtones there, and I believe that I'll go into it further, but I believe a part of his nature is due to some religious idealizations. So, very interesting that fixed star is conjunct the ascendant. So now we have, it's only moved slightly, as we can see, because it was just a couple of minutes difference. But now Mercury is closer to the IC. Pluto's moved away from the 8th house a little bit because he's not near the bridge. Now, it's something I didn't mention before. The bridges in general are ruled by a few planets and a house. The 3rd house, Neptune, Saturn, and Pluto all rule bridges. So the fact that the 8th house and Pluto being conjunct the 8th house, especially more closely in that last one, and the 8th house ruler being Venus in the 3rd house shows us the bridge. So there's some extra confirmation about the bridge. Saturn, as we know, was the body, as I explained, but that's also the bridge. So the perpetrator is on the bridge with a body. And Neptune, as we know, rules water. So it just completely reiterates and reconfirms the fact that he absolutely did drop a body off that bridge. Every ruler concerned with bridges is in the area that we looked at in that last segment. So that's something very interesting. Okay, so let's just note here some angles and some things like that. So now we have 14 degrees Pisces on the ascendant and 14 degrees Virgo on the descendant, 20 degrees Gemini on the IC. We've got a lot of retrograde planets, as you can see up this top half here. Now, the moon at 7 degrees of Capricorn, that's actually an interesting fixed star as well. And I shall tell you why. Where are we? Capricorn. Oops. I just had to get my notes out because I quickly forgot. Oh, okay. Yeah. The moon is conjunct Facies, Facies, which represents violent death, sickness, accidents, coldness and detachment, which he absolutely had, perfectionism, which is a trait, a Virgoan trait, which is interesting considering we have a Virgo perpetrator here. It's purely combative energy. This it's actually 8 degrees where the fixed star is, but yeah, the moon, which co-rules him in this, and the situation in general is really a nasty one. It also, interestingly, represents seeking fulfillment through charity works. He went under the guise of trying to help young African Americans, and virtually through ways of charity. He handed out flyers to get people to come and sing, apparently, which they never did, obviously, the children. But yeah, that's really interesting that those fixed stars work out. So let's have another look here. The third house cusp. So the FBI has stopped them. So that's this chart. And the third house cusp is 26 of Taurus, which is our goal. So when they were talking to him, which was at this point in time, and he blurted out, what they the police said, do you know why we pulled you over? And he said, it must be about the child murders. He instantly just put himself in such a terrible situation. Alcohol's not always just off with your head, or being beaten around the head or anything like that. It can just also mean pure devastation, your whole life falling around you. And that's pretty much what happened when he opened his mouth. Even though he wasn't charged with the murders of the children, he went to prison for the rest of his life anyway. So the minute he opened his mouth, started talking to the police, he was in trouble. Okay, now I'm going to move along to something very interesting.